Thanks very much, and it's good to be here. And my name's Stephen Ainger. I'm the CEO of Partnerships Renewables, and what I was going to talk about was a little bit of brief about who Partnerships Renewables are, and then I'm going to focus very much on wind projects, which we heard a little bit earlier, and just give you some flavour of what the risks and what goes into selecting a site and what makes a good site, and then just look at a few case studies with some councils and others, and then just conclude. So briefly, I think you've heard about this morning, but the context for action, of course, is the 20% target for renewable in CO2 and greenhouse gases by 2020, and associated with that, the 30% target for generating UK's electricity from renewables by 2020. And of course, 30% in my view is about the limit for sporadically generated renewables that it can't be guaranteed. Otherwise, above 30%, one starts having to consider increased baseload generation, which doesn't really become economic. And to put that in context, we're currently at about 7%, aren't we? So quite a ways to go, and quite a target to meet those what are legally committed numbers for the country. So Partnerships Renewables was set up in 2006 by the Carbon Trust with the goal of generating 500 megawatts. A lot of numbers around. To me, I think, what does 500 megawatts mean? Well, for those of us that know London, a Battersea power station on the south bank there, at full throttle in the 50s, coal-fired generation was about 500 megawatts. So we're talking about a moderate-sized power station as an initial target for the renewable power generation for PFR. And the whole goal, focusing on the public sector, was that very little had been done at that time on wind in particular, although 15% of the country's land is held by the public sector itself. And what was wanted was a low-risk development option for the public sector that brought community benefits and long-term revenues and didn't take away revenue from the resource away from core services that are so important to everybody and provided by the public sector bodies. So what does it mean in terms of generating 500 megawatts in practice, and what are some of the issues? Of course, as we've heard from the waste disposal side, the broader climate change can be controversial, yet alone planning consent for individual sites, and not to be taken on lightly, and to be thought through very, very carefully about what is the best solution for a particular area. And even when you've done that, renewables itself is a risky business. I think in England, the current latest figures show that only 25% of planning applications are successful for onshore wind, and each application costs between £300,000 and £500,000, bearing in mind that you, as a minimum, have to monitor the environment for a year and often 2 years. Obviously at an associated cost. And to do that, the requirement of understandings of the technologies, of the energy market and project financing, as we've heard before, and as far as wind is concerned, remembering that the carbon benefit does not accrue to the landowner or to the project owner or the wind farm owner. It accrues to the people that buy the electricity, or actually the supplier who pays for the rocks or gets the rocks done. And that's a whole subject in itself, of course. And I felt I had to comment on the FIT regime that was mentioned earlier as well, in that, of course, it's guaranteed and with grandfather rights for 25 years up to the review point in early 2013, with a review taking place in 2012. But I think it's generally recognised that those generous FIT allowances will be coming down for solar and potentially for wind as well. And of course, you only enjoy the current FIT rates if the plant is up and operating with a track record for a couple of months by April 2013. So time is of the essence to get those FIT regimes if you want to get a FIT price for the electricity. The partners we're currently working with for wind and hydro actually range from a range of public sector bodies, from the Environment Agency through to the Coal Authority on abandoned coal mines, Forestry Commission, Ministry of Justice, or National Offender Management Services, and various councils in England, Scotland and Wales, and a single university. And at the moment we've got about 100 sites across the country, but of course remembering that only a few of those will work and see all the way through planning. And the average site size in England is about 3 turbines, about 10 megawatts, and in Scotland, of course, a lot bigger, some of them up to 50, 100 megawatts, depending on the particular site location. And it's worth just looking, I think, at the timeline for a typical site, and we've heard about how long these things take normally. And this one, again, is a typical project. Obviously, lots of ranges on the times, but and for a normal wind project, and the timeline starts when the legal documents are signed on day one. And the first few months, well, the first thing that starts off, of course, is public consultation. We have a mantra to say that we don't want local people to learn about this through others. We'd like them to hear about it from us and from working in partnership. So that is a very key part in getting the whole thing underway, even before you're very certain that the project will actually work, because we don't want people to find out by happenstance. So during the first phase, first few months, it's really taking a view of the various technical and political risks. And of course you won't resolve them in that period, but you can sort of convince yourself from all the other sites you've seen, say, well, I think this is doable. And you take a judgment call, and after spending a little bit of money, and then start spending the serious money in the next phase on addressing each of those key risks, whether it's radar or whatever, and we'll come on to them, in a way that convinces yourself that technically it's viable. That takes 1 to 2 years. And then you then prepare the planning application, go into planning, and we know about planning and how long that can take. So overall, between 2, 3, 4 years from inception through to submission and construction, depending on the various local situation and the site details. And some of these risks we're talking about, I just want to talk a little bit about those, just so, because it's just I find it interesting to see just what exactly is involved in a wind project. And of course, there's the wind speed and access. Can you get the turbine there? What do the roads look like? Radar, noise, communications, and a whole bunch of technical stuff. And then, of course, you've got the environmental issues. What does it look like? What are the bird patterns? What's the ecology? What are the bats? Shadow flicker for neighbours? What is the neighbouring heritage and archaeology? And as we address those, then bringing the statutory consultees on board, and certainly we don't intend to make any application, and I'm sure many other developers don't intend to make applications where you've got a statutory objection. So the whole intent is to develop sites that don't have any statutory objections. And of course, the consultation and community involvement about the non-statutory consultees is also absolutely fundamental to a successful project. So if I can just talk briefly about a couple of these technical risks. Radar, a bit about noise and telecoms, and ecology and so on. First is radar, and of course this country is covered in radar, amazingly. I think the MOD issued a map a few years ago about where they would accept wind turbines, and I think there was a little spot just north of the Isle of Wight. The rest of the country was off limits. And it's because radar surprisingly can't detect the height of the signal coming back, and therefore if you have more than one turbine, you get a Doppler return from the blade tips, which look like an aircraft. And so understandably, people with radars get a little nervous about putting wind turbines around, as do I as a regular flyer somewhere.